One, two, three.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do?
Bad cops, bad cops. Bad cops, bad cops. Bad cops, bad cops. Bad cops, bad cops.
Yes, so many cops are on the tick. What do you expect when they use tear gas and tanks? Whether in a car or on a horse, cops don't mind using excessive force.
Bad cops, bad cops.
What you gonna do?
Bad cops, bad cops.
What you gonna do?
Bad cops, bad cops.
What you gonna do?
Bad cops, bad cops.
This is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
So this is kind of like this is a bad cop, but it's like, you know, celebrating good news because no cops are actually involved in the situation. So this is interesting, bad cops. So pretty much what we had these really breaking news that happened over the past few days that pretty much these stats came out showing that, you know, these non-police, non-armed people who go out, social workers who go to respond to mental health issues that are not, the people don't have guns, the people don't have crowbars or weapons. The social workers go and deal with mentally ill people, and come to find out, less people are dying and getting beat up. That's what I heard was going on with these new stats. But first, I want to pull up this this stat.
And for those scoring at home,
Yeah,
this is what we're talking about when we say defund the police. That means that we take a job that should not belong to the police, we take it away from them and take the funding for those things that they do that they're not experts in, and then we take that funding and put it somewhere else so that the people who are better equipped to do those jobs can do those jobs and get better outcomes. That is a definition of defund the police.
So this article is really shocking to me. New York police interventions with emotionally distressed students have increased. Somehow there are more cops in public schools with people under 18. Somehow have to deal with armed people in their building somehow. So number of interventions was 24% higher during the first quarters of 2019 and 2020 school year than the comparable period in 2016-2017. So somehow New York City school police responded to more than 12,000 incidents between July 2016 and June 2020, involving children in emotional distress, at times handcuffing students as young as 5 years old.
The handcuffs don't even fit on them because they're not meant for them.
They got special toddler handcuffs. Forget giving money to the social worker. Let's invest in toddler small handcuffs. So this is crazy to me. So this is such incident.
Do they put Barney characters on the handcuffs?
I love you. You're on parole. You're a senior probation officer once a month. Like,
if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
exactly, man. So such incidents is made a long-running debate, a fantastically obvious debate. What the officers called school safety agents removed from campuses. Please.
Really, if you're a school safety agent, your job should be to tell the kids not to run in the hallways with a pencil in their hand.
If you're locking kids up, then that's a whole nother thing going on right now. So the police interventions, according to the analysis, disproportionately obviously involve students in City District 75, which caters to students with special needs, Black students, students in low-income communities such as the Bronx. What we have in here as well, we're older guys. So, but what's happening with these schools are being so defunded, and kids are going to like these kind of private schools where you have to be perfect kid almost to be in these schools. So what happens to like kids who can't keep up, kids who need like special help? They get put into the public school system, and they get put in these districts where like cops everywhere. Somehow they actually need soft love support, and what they get is like near prison like conditions. I've seen these special needs programs. They're so poorly funded that you have officers interacting with these students. It's outrageous. So almost half of all interventions between July 2016 and June 2020 involved children between the ages of 4 and 12. Over half of them. You want to see the numbers? 12,000 incidents. Half of those incidents were children who can't even get the vaccine. Like, this is what we're talking about. Like, why are cops dealing with 4-year-olds?
You know why? Because we need to make sure that the 4-year-olds are groomed for their prison cell, their inevitable prison cell. This is what we're talking about when we say the school to prison pipeline. You're trying to get these children familiar with being accosted by police.
I just can't imagine being 4 and 5 and dealing with. I don't remember the police. I don't remember the concept of policing when I was 4
And let's talk about the because it's easy to pick on the cops here, but let's talk about the lack of accountability of the adults that are supposed to be in control and authority. You can't interact with these kids as educators. You have to call the police on a 4-year-old? Really? Really? Really?
Yeah. I'm delirious about this. Yeah, I'm laughing not because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's just like
it's absurd. Like, I mean, there are niggas in the hood that won't call the cops with a bullet in their fucking liver. But the principal, oh my God, this 4-year-old is gonna overpower me. I need to call the police. I need backup. What?
This 4-year-old, help.
And these are the same people crying about millennials being weak. What was that? What was that about millennials being weak?
I see a dust bowl going down.
You have to call the police on a 6-year-old?
Handcuff a 5-year-old? Excuse me. Excuse them. So the DOA has to respond to this, as well as the school safety agents union. So Georgie Floyd, who's not any relation to George Floyd.
Oh, Gregory Floyd.
President of the School Safety Agents Union, Teamsters Local 237, said that the DOE lacks the administrative capacity or experience to oversee the agents. They need training, they need supervision, all the things the police department already has in place. The DOE is saying that creating schools are safe and welcoming for all students at the core of this administration's work. We have made important changes to drive the record decreases in police interventions, arrests, suspensions, and the system-wide adoption of restorative justice practices. All students must return to healing-centered schools this fall, and we're hiring over 500 new social workers and adding over 700 more community schools to ensure every student has a caring adult to go through when in crisis. So everyone's talking the talk. Everyone talks the talk all the time, but we have to see the numbers. We see the numbers, and the numbers look pretty terrible. Mm-hmm. That we have 12,000 incidents, and half of them are children under 12.
Yep. Conjecture lies, numbers don't. So we want to see the proof in the pudding. I mean, it's. I think about how horrible it was safety wise when I was in school in the late 80s through the 90s, and you think about the unique psychological challenges that the kids have in New York City schools, because like not to like denigrate other places in the country, but we don't have like mass shootings like in our schools, but what we have is mass poverty, mass hungry kids. We have kids that live in violent neighborhoods. They live in violent households where it's very difficult for them to perform very well in school when they don't have the environment at home where it is peaceful enough for them to focus on their studies. So, or stable enough, not just peaceful, but even stable enough. Fathers are not there. In some cases, the mother isn't there. So, these kids, the real things that they face, they're not facing, active shooter drills, but what they're facing is...
Here comes the New York City kids.
New York City kids. they're facing every other problem imaginable besides that. And then you add the isolation of the Rona and a lot of these psychological hurdles that these kids are going through. The last thing we need is throwing a cop in a kid's face of really any age, unless they are a true danger to themselves and others. And you can't tell me that if you're a 50-year-old teacher, you can't take a 5-year-old girl without having to call the cops.
So I want to turn to the positive thing that's going on, like the non-policing. So New York City is sending social workers. So pretty much what's happening, it was a pilot program, mental health pilot program in Harlem, and it's sending social workers to police to some 911 calls. So the numbers released last Thursday, pretty much. So pretty much from the first month of the pilot, from June 6th to July 7th, dispatchers flagged 138 mental health emergency calls and 3 police precincts as eligible for the new teams, which is roughly a quarter of the health emergency calls fielded in the area where the program is operating. So that kind of just pushed aside the mental health crisis that's happening over there. But move along.
But you know what? But you know the thing that gets me.
Yeah,
They have just 2 teams of 3.
Yeah.
And they have shifts. There's 2 8-hour shifts.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I don't want to nitpick about this, but I have to. There is a whole 8-hour period where nobody's covering. And
no, they have to give the cops money for their robot dog.
No, the psychological distress that a New Yorker could face, it is not going to wait until the 16-hour period that you have your 2 teams of 3. Not saying, just saying. People can freak out literally at any time.
NYPD needs funding for their beekeeper operation. We don't need another team, mental health team. That's not really necessary. So
I'm not mad about beekeepers. We need bees.
No, they have NYPD bee patrols. They help keep bees, rescue bees in people's houses and stuff like that.
Yeah, we kind of do need that though, because without bees,
but I think the parks department can deal with that, not like some guys with SWAT team. Of those eligible calls, the teams responded to 107, or just under 80%. That is a lot to be starting dealing with right away out of the gate. The city says the other 20% of people received additional police EMT response, probably because they had a gun or some kind of weapon or some shit like that. So when approached by the teams, half of the patients were taken to the hospital. In traditional police responses, hospitalization occurred more than 80% of the time, maybe because they got beat up.
They're like, yo, if you call us out here, somebody's got to get beat up. Like,
someone's going to the hospital if you call the
cops. Somebody. You know what I'm saying?
Whether you're
Because
mentally ill or not.
because the gas it took to get the ambulance in my cop car over here, somebody's getting fucked up.
So about a quarter.
Who's it gonna be? You choose between yourselves. Who's getting beat up today?
So we want to go to this actual community-based mental health program. They're being managed in a compassionate, humane way. They're not leading to arrest. They're not leading to violence. They're leading to treatment. They're leading to connections to care. So, however, they still say the number of times the non-police teams are responding remains hella low. I mean, if you said that just for a month, they only were able to respond to flag 108 calls. I mean, they only touched the surface of that particular district in Harlem. So this is pretty interesting. So we have to see what the mayor's office think about this. The mayor's office is saying that they plan to publish more data, response times, the type of locations. The demographic data is not yet to be released. So this is supporting that the city is actually showing concrete results that non-police people can go out there and help mentally ill people rather than cops show up and then next you know we have another viral video of someone getting murdered on camera. So the city officials hope the share of calls rather than the team will grow from 25% to 50%. in the coming months is to train 911 operators and tweaks its dispatch technology. So, so this is great to see this happen. This is good news. Um, and I want to share this other video right here. Um, that talks about non-police programs. I'll play this clip right here from the Now This. So it talks about non-police alternatives to first responders. We have to watch a commercial about Congress.
Maybe in some of these situations, your first responder should be your last responder.
Police don't solve mental health. Behavioral health experts do. Policing can't solve homelessness. Homes do. Policing doesn't solve addiction. Treatment and care does.
So this is not just New York City. It's all across the country. People trying to figure this shit out.
All communities get into crisis. All communities want public safety, but not all communities feel comfortable calling 911, and not all communities feel comfortable having the police in their home.
Imagine calling the police because you got a hangnail. You know, there was a police officer that
triage this.
Sorry, I'll save that thought.
The police as the portal, because what we also know is that people want to have solutions to their problems, but they don't necessarily want to be funneled through the justice system.
I want to see this data.
According to the study, police in cities across the country spend about 30 to 40% of their time responding to totally non-criminal calls.
30 to 40%.
Across the 10 cities, it was only about 0.5% to 1.8% of their time that police were dealing with what some think police are there to deal with: violent crimes, including assaults.
Wow, that is a tiny percent, yo. And they try to blow it up like we living in dark world hell where everyone's being murdered and raped everywhere. You know, unbelievable.
We have to stop assuming that law enforcement, that the first responder that is law enforcement, can and is willing to address a level 2 problem with level 2 force. Instead, what we see is that problems get addressed with the same level of force. And so asking law enforcement, who are probably overworked, over-traumatized, and unsympathetic at this point to certain kinds of calls, are using the same kind of adrenaline and the same kind of tactics to deal with an armed robbery as they are dealing with someone who's mentally ill. And it's not safe for communities.
Absolutely.
Helping out on the street system.
Where is that money going to go if it's not going to law enforcement? And you know, our response is, you know, what we see on Cahoots is crisis is informed by an inability to meet basic needs, you know, an inability to access resources. And so when we're looking at how a community could use public safety dollars for true safety of the public, we need to be looking at things like basic needs, you know, mental health services, better substance abuse treatment, you know, low barrier shelters. And you know, when we talk to these folks that really just don't want to see any of that money get cut from that police budget, you know, then what is the alternative? How else are we going to be able to meet those needs?
Just put everyone in the jail, everybody.
I mean, we're talking about law enforcement, but not everything that they're being called for is has anything to do with law that needs to be enforced.
And folks don't always want that to be the solution.
We can tie this into 911. We can tie this into our community-based services, and we actually don't need law enforcement to be the first ones to respond. We can work in partnership with them, sure. We can work in partnership with a lot of folks, but that's not the goal. The goal would be to have community-based services responding to the community's needs.
So that's a cool. I like that video a lot. Really, like,
yeah.
It talks about defund the police without even saying it.
Right.
You don't even hear the word about it, but you know
right, because there's a lot of poor marketing behind it. Right. So I want to change the outlook on this just a little bit, so people have a clear understanding of what we're saying. I did a tribute to a police officer on my other show more than a month ago. And the reason why we did a tribute to this police officer is because he was called to the scene of an emergency. A boy who couldn't swim was close to drowning. So when they called 911, who did the dispatcher send out there? Police officers. So when the police officer, like they were saying, using that same level of force, that the officer that wants to be a hero jumps into the lake. But the officer didn't know how to swim. So both him and the boy died. They both drowned. So what if they would have said, well, there's an emergency on the water, and then they send some motherfucker that knows how to swim? Right?
There's like a old man's tale that's gonna be told for generations to come.
Right. Imagine instead of sending a police officer with a badge and a gun to address a drowning, you send Michael Phelps instead. Right? This is what we're talking about when we are talking about defund the police. We're not just talking about taking away tools for the officers to be able to do their jobs effectively. We're talking about taking responsibility away from police officers that don't belong to them. Again.
Like handcuffing 5-year-olds.
Right. Like,
that's the last thing a cop needs to be doing.
Right. Like, if I saw a small roach in my kitchen, I'm not going to call animal control. Okay? If I get a splinter or a bee sting in my hand, I'm not going to call... I'm not going to call for a surgeon. If one of my wives burns the chicken, we're not going to call for a 7 alarm for the FDNY, to flood the block, right? Like, we need stuff that is commensurate. We need a response that's commensurate with the level and the kind of emergency that is out there. And when you look at all the things that police are sent out for, if they like if noise complaints, people smoking marijuana, if you're sending police for that, then that means that they are not where they're actually needed, and then your crime rate goes up. It has nothing to do with defund the police while the crime rate gone up, because we've already disproven that in earlier episodes of Black Power Magic Hour, where the crime rate was going up before the budget cuts went into effect officially. So the police had the budgets that they always had, but crime was still going up.
PD got more money this year.
Right, and the crazy thing is that police really don't prevent crime. They just show up after the crime has been committed.
Yeah, that's what
so the crime rate is still going to be there.
Every cop show's about. Every cop shows after they find the bones. It's not about preventing the bones from being
every movie
after the bones.
Right.
Find the bones later.
in every movie, right? The hero solves the major terrorist, drug dealer, gang problem. And then after the problem is solved, then all the police show up. That happens in every movie. They didn't pull that out of their ass.
Just aluminum foil blanket, it is over.
Like, and it's all like you want to talk about defund the police? How about we don't send the police to hand out metal blankets? Okay, we don't need you for that. Okay, send an EMT. Or send somebody from New York Roadrunners, the people that run the New York City Marathon. Send one of those motherfuckers. They got the metal blankets. We don't need a cop to hand me a metal blanket after I've already solved a major international incident by myself.
almost every day is like the cops show up an hour later. That's the joke, right? So it's like it's weird that, but that's because people who want this stuff, they probably live in neighborhoods where they don't even see a cop. They don't even see a cop anywhere, so they get their perspective a whole different way than we do. When we walk out the door and we see a cop almost every day, if we walk outside, a lot of people like that, But I gotta end the segment so we can talk about this live. So this is Black Power Magic Hour. Check us on all the different platforms, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. When Dr. Genius, he's live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, talking shit. And that's bad cops, good cops, because there's no cops showing up.